we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the money, right? So we have a couple really great speakers. And we also have a webinar. If you go to YouTube and you go quotes Compass Natural top, you'll see that we've done a webinar on where's the money. We did a webinar on technology. We did another webinar on reasons for transitioning to organic. And we also would like to address that here. So been very fortunate to have Tim Luckow with Farm. It's the Farm portfolio. And then we're also going to hear from Bryan Cook with FSA. So a little bit about some financial support out there for farmers. And this is only touching the surface. I would also recommend taking a look at our webinar at all the different ways that farmers can look at some subsidies to help with certification costs, and then also raising alternative capital for farm operations. So Tim, you want to come on up? And I don't know if you have some slides or, we're happy to hear from you. So just share your brilliance with us, please.
No, I don't have any slides. I'm just here to learn and to share some of what we're doing. So I moved out here about 2 years ago with the goal of trying to regenerate grasslands. I previously was in the music industry, so I'm definitely a little bit of an oddball in the space. I started a platform that's paid a couple $100 million to artists from streaming platforms like Spotify. And I basically felt like land was kind of the deciding layer of how a lot was going to happen in the future. You talk about these things from the coast or on the internet or these different places, but if you're not working with farmers and ranchers, if you're not speaking with landowners, it's a lot slower to actually implement the change. And so a lot of what we're doing is we're partnering with leaders in the space who are looking to expand their operations, and then we're working with them to expand. Some of that comes from co-location with solar and wind, like I mentioned earlier. I'm a major bison fan and working with some folks in South Dakota, so glad to meet you here. And I think in the future, what I've kind of found as an outsider is the way that we speak about these things is important to how do we connect with other folks. And so I think at Farm, we're lucky to be learning from these great farmers and ranchers, and always looking to meet more folks. And so out here, the reason I'm here today is I'm working with a group called Mad Capital based in Boulder. And we're looking for regenerative organic farmers here in Colorado. And so the goal is to meet them and, find neighbors, land around them or whatever it may be. We have data as well, technology. And just help them expand, help more regenerative acres and regenerative organic acres happen more quickly. And so that's my goal.
If a farmer were to work with you, what would it look like?
Yeah, so generally speaking, we'll come out to the farm or ranch. We, do kind of a traditional diligence process with those folks. We learn their goals, what they want to do. And then we also, in general, kind of separately, we'll talk with energy developers that we know that are working in that area and try to find parcels that work for both. And so our general idea is, if we're looking at 1,000 acres, we try to do community scale energy. And so it would be 150 out of 1,000 acres. And that takes some pressure off of the rancher in many cases, especially like Eastern Colorado. And then it just kind of solves the problem for both parties. And we do 15-year leases with them. And then we also share some of the cash flow from the energy lease with the farmer. And we share the carry, which is the profit at the end of the period. If they're not able to buy the farmer ranch themselves, which they have a right of first offer to do, we split the profits with them at the end. And so just trying to create aligned incentives where it's not money against the farmer or rancher, and it's actually trying to support these people that are doing really important, really good work. And I think they deserve to be able to expand.
Yeah. Are you matching them with appropriate energy, renewable energy projects?
Yeah. And so in general, sometimes the projects are already kind of scoped out by the energy companies. A lot of the time we're bringing parcels to energy companies and saying, we're not looking for utility scale, 1,000+ acre kind of deals here. But we do think, a 200, 300 acre kind of solar array, it makes it a lot more appealing to the investors that are looking to invest in these projects. But it also just, if there's a drought that year, whatever it may be, that lease is a nice consistent income to have. So that's the thinking. Yeah.
So you're talking pretty big scope. What with the possibilities of trying to use the existing buildings that are already there to attach solar to those properties. Because what I've learned is that the utility companies will only let you put on so much to generate that you can only, what I'm trying to say, you can only put on 115% of what you're going to use.
Yeah.
So how do you go about taking and scaling that up without taking a whole bunch of land out of production?
Yeah, it's definitely one of the trickier parts of it all. We're looking a lot at what's called behind the meter uses of energy. So kind of like you're saying, on-site use versus trying to get everything sold to the grid. There's a lot of folks out there like freight container farms and things like that are actually looking for land access as well. And so that's one kind of solve that we've been working on with a couple people. But in general, I think where does the power go and how do you make that faster than 5 years? And how, like all of that is very tricky right now just with the interconnection system. And so I think for us, I was excited about electric tractors. I don't think that's happening quite the same way I used to. But I do believe there's a lot of on-site electricity. Like I'm talking to some folks around anaerobic digesters, things like that. I think just the generally on-site electricity use is going to be the way it goes for a lot of our projects. Sell the access to the grid, basically.
Yeah. This is not my wheelhouse, but I do know that Byron Project Solar has made headway in terms of being able to do CSAs with power coming off farm grids. Just FYI, I think there is some answers to that.
It depends upon the tower company as well. The rural cooperatives are not going to be a lot more. Excel might be more interested, but then, oh my gosh, dealing with them.
Yeah, I just think that is something for the future that needs to unwind. And my question to you is, are you keeping the voltaics in mind where underneath all those panels, it's not just dead dirt?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think the way I kind of think about it internally is I think that the energy leases can help pay for the regenerative transitions in those practices. I think the land use is really important. And so trying to make the most of every acre in that respect is really important. I'm a big fan of Jack's Solar Farm, our solar garden. So yeah, I think what he's doing there is really amazing. And it's nice to have a template right here in the state that you can go see and tell people to go check out.
Yeah, we're partnering with them for putting medicinal plants under the arrays and how that works, and also consulting on some others.
How are producers finding you?
We have a lot of just kind of inbound, like referral kind of folks. Speaking at places like this, I always meet farmers and ranchers. And right now, we're currently working on a 3-project kind of diversified portfolio: Georgia, Colorado, and South Dakota. And so different kinds of energy too. So like in South Dakota, for example, we're trying to see if we can do distributed wind with bison, which will be, hopefully it works. But there are some examples of that already.
I've been hearing a lot about the voltaics all day today, but is wind power also a big part of it?
I think in the plains it could be. I think, right now most people think of wind power as the giant turbines that you can see from miles away. But there's also much smaller manufacturers like a group called Pecos Wind Power that you can't even see from the road really. And so I think things like that are appealing. And those are more for on-site use than trying to generate for, 10,000 houses or whatever it might be.
Plus those towers are probably pretty capital intensive.
They are. I mean, we as farm don't do any of that. Like we're essentially acquiring land with equity with investors that are, basically want to support regenerative agriculture and the expansion of that. And then with the farmer and rancher side in general, these are folks that have been doing it in their communities for years, often decades. And, our thinking is if we can do it with them, then we can start working with more of the younger farmers in the area and start to help them expand as well.
Any other questions for Tim? Thank you, and we wish you the best with farm. Great name, by the way. All right, one more speaker stands between us and FAC, right, at the Sundown Saloon, where we hope you'll join us after, at least for a drink. And Bryan Cook has been with the Farm Service Agency for 35 years, and he'll be with us for about 15 minutes. And he made it to the Spur campus. Have you been here before?
No. No, and I found out it's not on 17th Street downtown like the email said either, so.
No. And now you know it's right next to the National Western
It's right,
Complex.
yeah, that's right.
Space. So,
Yeah.
thank you for joining us. And I mean, you know, it really boils down to the basics with FSA loans, Farm Service Agency loans. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that again in our Where's the Money. So Bryan, thank you very much.
Oh, you bet. Who doesn't have enough debt? Nobody raised their hand?
You got enough money?
I have debt.
That's a good point. It's measured.
You gotta stay in the box over here.
Oh,
It's hard for the camera.
I have to stay
There you go.
15 minutes before.
I don't want to give him a technical.
Both debt and income are measured in money. One is an obligation, one is an opportunity. There's no shortage of debt whatsoever in production agriculture. I can attest to that after, 35 years. When I started, cows were saber-toothed cows. But there's plenty of bad debt, but there's a real lack of profit. So that, the mechanics of FSA loans, I can whip through that in a hurry, but that's the boring mechanical part. Just basically saying Farm Service Agency is a federal government agency. It is restricted to a narrow window of production agriculture operators that won't work no matter what you do financially and not ready for commercial lending, basically. If we do our job right, we work ourselves out of a job by graduating everybody into commercial credit because they've established themselves well enough to meet those standards. There's three basic kinds of loans. Real estate loans, there's two direct and guaranteed loans, which direct are straight from the federal government. Guarantee are where we act as a guarantor for a local lender. Within those, there's long-term real estate loans, there's intermediate chattel loans, that's breeding stock and machinery, and then annual operating loans. That's the direct loan limit is 400,000 on the operating loans, 600,000 on the real estate. The guarantees can go up to like 2.2, something like that. But that's just the kind of the boring mechanics of it, because actually, how do you become a successful business operator or ag operator? I put it to people in a different way. I guess I said, when you come in with an application for land or whatever, we're talking about ruminants, you better ask the cows what they think of the deal first. And I word it that way on purpose, because the cows are the money. And all you are is the person with the opposable thumb that writes the check, but you don't have the money. It has to come from them. So that's how you analyze that to come back to another statement of talking about sustainable agriculture. If you throw debt into the equation with you, then sustainable agriculture is nothing more than a profitable business more times than not. So that, in a way, that makes it kind of weird, because it's not you actually applying for it. It's you analyzing and managing those other things to try to meet that obligation. So the one thing about FSA that's different from pretty much every other lender, I mean, most lenders sell debt. We underwrite business. So the basic foundational building blocks of all our loan applications are asking the cows what they think. I mean, you're looking at, in the case of prairie or rangeland, it's always going to be, what's the carrying capacity? You got to start with that. There's no amount of debt that's going to do anything one way or the other if we're over capacity. That's Mother Nature running the show. She always will. If we don't give due deference to things bigger than ourselves in that equation, then we will not be sustainable agriculture. I will not have had a successful graduation of someone to commercial credit, because we'll have been too engrossed in our own human hubris and not giving due deference to things bigger than ourselves. This is probably a weird talk for financials, but the more important thing on financial stuff, the mechanics are what they are. It's not really that big a deal. It's how you interrelate with those obligations and debt loads and cash flows and that type of thing. So how do we do that? I mean, how do we have a a very, very low loss rate with beginning operators with no experience, no history and all that. Actually go to CSU a lot of times and we go to the ag business management and we use their enterprise budgets. Because that's the whole thing. How do you do a projection that's realistic data if you haven't already been in operation? It's a chicken egg financial thing. Well, that's what grad students are for. You can slave over all this data and put together all those enterprise budgets that you can get on the ABM site. And not just CSUs. I mean, the best way is to get as many of those as you can in whatever specific operation you're looking for. Use the awesome tool of Excel and put them next to each other. And then you can start to see, okay, this is what's happening to the people that are already stuck in debt and in this business. That's an objective third-party source of reality, financial reality that you definitely want to go through and that we would go through in that before you're in debt. Because once the debt's there, the debt's running you. And if it's too much of that, then that will not be sustainable agriculture. That will not transition into anything, and that you won't be able to fulfill those larger goals or to provide yourself with gainful employment through your operative years if those realities aren't looked at very, very closely. So actually, even for an existing operation, definitely look at those enterprise budgets. I mean, CSU wouldn't want me to say K-State because they're one of their greatest competitors and that kind of thing. But actually, and we've used enterprise budgets for things from all over the country: Penn State, U Davis, Oregon. I mean, Cornell. Any place that has a good one that gives you that data. So yeah, it's a little bit, my presentations always go off on this kind of metaphysical journey, but that's how you interrelate with the debt. The debt is just a mechanical thing. The debt's a tool the same way as the machinery is. Just depends on how well you've implemented it, employed it. And I always tell people too, it's that profit preserves passion. So you have to have passion to get into anything, especially agriculture, considering its sickening amount of risk and ridiculously low historical rates of return and endless toil, 28 hours a day, 8 days a week, and that type of thing. You'd have to have passion to get into anything, or you'll always question yourself a lot of times on that too. But if there isn't some actual profit in that thing, because it is, once the debt's there, you're in business. It's capitalism. But if there isn't profit in there, there eventually will be a point where you can't sustain that. So there again, that's why ask the cows what they think of the deal before you get into debt, because that way you can take yourself out of your own crosshairs. Because a lot of times you're thinking, well, what do I have to do to make this work? Well, you don't. You have to find out what the cows think of it first, and then find out if that's some scenario that is actually worthy of investing that in so that the cows have a chance to pay it back. Is it happy hour yet?
I think so. So, it's interesting to me because a little bit of it, you're making us think about, do I want that FSA loan?
Do you want any debt?
Do we want debt? That's an important question.
Debt is an obligation. Profit is an opportunity for discretion. So you definitely want as much discretion as you can have to balance out that obligation.
If somebody wanted to follow up and chat with you a little bit more, or you were person to talk to, how can they communicate with you?
Yeah, we have a bunch of FSA offices around. I'm the only loan office for basically the northern Front Range here.
Mm-hmm.
My office is in Brighton, so cards here and stuff. But yeah, Farm Service Agency, sounds like we fix tractor tires, but actually it is a financial operation. But yeah, the Brighton office, Adams County that's my home office for this area.
Thank you very much, Brian. We really appreciate you coming today.
You bet.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. You have a question?
Can I make one final statement?
Well, I actually would like folks to maybe give a final impression and then we'll go get a drink. What do you got?
Is that okay? One of the things that's kind of permeated the conversation today is the kind of a core assumption on CO2. And that CO2 is bad, it's a negative, gas out there, and it's enormously harmful. A couple statistical issues about that. One, people who live at altitude across the board have longer lifestyles than any place else. So if you live at altitude, you're fundamentally more healthy. So one premise in there is that's about CO2. We have less oxygen, more CO2. Two. Next premise argument here is, and you can Google this, CO2 is 0.04% of the atmosphere. It is a minor greenhouse gas. To assert that it is causing global warming doesn't make any sense. Third issue on, when you look at that, what's the point? It's a minor greenhouse gas.
I can't help you.
Nitrous.
I mean, most of the atmosphere is nitrogen.
Yeah, and you can look at nitrogen oxide, for example. Oh, my final point on this is that there are some pretty profound arguments out there now that are suggesting that we need more CO2 in the atmosphere, not less. The planet is actually greening. That is a really positive thing across the board in terms of what takes place with this. And the final element on this is I do not believe there's actually been, when you have a hypothesis and you posit that CO2 is causing global warming, what science does is posits then a test to verify that. I do not believe there's been one test ever that proves that CO2 is causing global warming. And I don't believe it's a test that could be performed simply because you can't control CO2. So it's based on, and all I'm asking people to do is to look in more detail at science in terms of challenging this. When we come out and we want to destroy a beef industry out there because cows fart, it's just, we're not being rational is the point here. It's not to have an argument about it, but simply say there's enough data out there to say the science there's not good science behind this.
Right, and there you're talking about methane, not CO2, and it's not the cow, it's the how.
Okay.
Right? So who else? Who else has an impression from the day? And I think we could talk more climate change over a beer, but boy, what a big subject. Anybody else some final impressions for the day?
I just came in at the end in regards to finance, just curious about how many people look into all the resources for grants to use this for other government programs that give you money to help improve the environment.
There are other government programs in particular in regard to our theme, which is transitioning to organic. And we have a webinar that we put out. If you go to Compass Natural on YouTube and look up Transition to Organic, we did a whole webinar on where's the money. There's actually a great group called Farm Raise out there that will help you track what grants. And McLean, you may know more about just some subsidies and grants to help you with your certification costs. And then there are a lot of alternative financing and capital resources out there, and it's just what works best for your operation. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm with the organic division at the Colorado Department of Ag, but we have a few other folks here in the room. Some presented and have already left, but conservation, soil and whatnot, and then our public health and environment division would also have some resources depending on what specifically you're looking to do. So go ahead and reach out to me, and whatever your inquiry is, I'll forward it to the right person.
I see people writing this down, but you can take a picture of that slide too and get.
We'll also send the link of this entire presentation if you even, but we'll send the link to everyone.
Sweet. So by the way, I want to thank Allison Oliver Salvati over here. Who's put a lot of this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Allison is our VP at Compass Natural. We're very glad to have her, and we're really happy to have you guys all attend. Thank you very much. This is an inaugural event. We have a vision to hopefully do this next year as well. because we just think this is a wonderful campus and we really love the opportunity to have what I call this kind of public-private academic partnership between CSU, CDA, and your humble servants here at Compass Natural.